Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Diane Downs, and where we're picking up right now is the trial of Diane Downs and how the aftermath might be perhaps the craziest part of her story. I'm joined by my friend Christine Medrano. And Christine, let's talk a little bit about the 6-week deliberation that was marked with Christy, her oldest daughter, testifying against her mother, and how crazy that must have been. I mean, to put that on a child.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so much of that decision was kind of resting on this little girl's shoulders, you know what I mean? Because at that point, she's like she's the eyewitness, you know what I mean? She's the person who's shot and who can identify the shooter, and to have to go into court to, it was my mom. I can't imagine. I mean, makes me really love my mom.
Right. I also think that, I'm not sure what the conviction would have been or what the verdict would have been had Christy not testified, because unfortunately, or fortunately, this is the justice system, we want it to be fair, you could pose a lot of reasonable doubt into the case of Diane Downs were there not this eyewitness testimony. And that is what we saw the defense was doing. They were saying, yes, she's a liar. Yes, she doesn't remember the events very clearly, but would you? And that's really hard for a jury to say, I don't know, maybe. And that's, they were inserting a lot of reasonable doubt, but having her daughter take the stand against her own mother, as guided by the prosecution, I think was huge in this case. And you don't see that a lot. You don't have kids taking the stand, fortunately, that often.
Yeah, thank God. I mean, also I feel like there's so much that you can say and blame on shock too. In this instance, a lot of people are saying, oh, she didn't cry, she didn't have any emotion because she was in shock. But I think it's really beautiful because afterwards, the prosecutors go on to adopt her and her brother, surviving kids afterwards, and so I can't imagine how hard that was for her to go and testify, but to know that she's going with this family who clearly cares about her.
Yeah, there is an odd happy ending and resolution for these kids that clearly came from a really unhappy household. A lot of things that were brought up at trial as well were about Diane as a mother, and apparently Cheryl, the child that did pass away, had said to a friend about a week before the murder that she was afraid of her mother. And so these kids were living in fear, or they were in a really unhappy household, even if the murder had not happened. So it did have this nice resolution. The kids have remained private, which is absolutely their right. But as we said, Diane Downs was pregnant on trial. And after she was sentenced to life plus 50 years on June 17th, 1984, she gives birth behind bars to Becky Babcock, I believe she goes by that name. And she's been open about her mother being Diane Downs. And she actually sat down and spoke again with my girl Oprah. So let's take a look at this clip and then talk about it.
With her, she wouldn't tell me who he was. And her letters started to be conspiracy theories. She believed that she was being kept in prison to be kept safe, that her husband, who is some government official, was keeping her locked up because that's where she was safe. And she began signing her letters, love mom and dad, and that sort of thing. And they made me very uncomfortable. I asked her to stop writing at one point, and this was after she told me people had been watching me my whole life and were trying to kill me. And at that point, she then accused me of being one trying to kill her.
So then you concluded what?
That she's crazy.
Yeah. And so then you just decided to leave her alone, or what?
I regretted writing her. Like you said, I have an amazing family, and there's no room in my life for someone like Diane Downs.
Yeah.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the whole Becky Babcock story and her daughter and her relationship with her mom? I mean, this is a very odd turn of events.
It really is. Even if you look at that letter that they showed for a split second, at the very bottom of it, it says, I'm showing my age. That even in writing her daughter, who she never met, who was taken away from her, she still has this vanity that she's very aware of, and that she's kind of, And it's just sad to see kind of this woman who clearly just wanted a relationship with her mother, who, you know, she knew she was adopted from a very young age, but her parents kept away from like who her mother was from her. And then when she learns who it is, she wants to like know her. She asks, you know, who her father was. All these questions that she should have the right to have answered, and she like won't answer them, and she is kind of crazy.
Well, especially given that Diane Downs even says that she sort of got pregnant out of boredom.
Yeah.
It wasn't as though
Loneliness.
it definitely wasn't an accidental pregnancy at all. It was absolutely intentional. So you would think that she would want to have this connection with her daughter, but she's way more interested in just spreading lies and just lying to her.
Theories.
You know, I actually also watched her parole hearing because she was up for parole in 2009 or 2010. She won't be up again until 2020. Whew! She's never. I mean, I've heard multiple people say she's never going to be free again. She's just not mentally well. But even then, in her parole hearing, however many years after the night of the murder, she is still lying, and she's still very. She's not as paranoid as I think she sounds in the letters to her daughter, but she still is not willing to take any responsibility or even own up to proven facts, like her daughter testifying against her, or like exit wounds or gunshot residue, things that don't add up in the car, the blood spatter in the car. She still is saying it was one gunman and then it was two gunmen. One of them was wearing a ski mask, like these crazy stories. And she's still living in this fantasy world, and she tried to bring her adoptive daughter into it, thinking that she could have this control again because she has such a manipulative personality. And then her daughter, who is a free person in the world, was like, I'm good. I'm super fine.
It makes me wonder if she would even admit to being kind of a bad mother. You know what I mean? Even something that's on a smaller scale, if she's not able to admit to these grand, you know, like crimes, if she can admit to being a horrible mother to these people and to kind of only caring about herself.
It's a good question. I wonder what she would own up to.
Yeah.
Because people only ask her, as far as I've seen in interviews and public record, the direct question about the night of the murder.
Yeah.
But I think the broader questions would probably be more telling of who Diane Downs is.
Yeah.
For example, do you think you were a good mother? Or how do you reflect on the lives of your children?
Yeah, how have your actions affected your children, if you have any remorse for any of the things that have happened, you know? Even like her decision to go down like a road that they've never gone down before, like it's all, even if I was a Diane Downs like truther and I thought she was.
Which, by the way, there is a website.
There are so many people.
There are people that are Diane Downs truthers.
Yes. Which is crazy to me. But like to even if I was one, like the kind of like mental contortionism I would have to do to get myself to that place. I'd have to deny all the other things that led up to the murder for just being like a bad kind of negligent mother.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's something to be said for the fact that she maintains her innocence? Do you think that she truly believes that she is innocent, perhaps? And that's why she still, because that is rather remarkable, that there is all this almost insurmountable evidence. There's a mountain of evidence against her, and she maintains her innocence. Do you think that's because she believes she is innocent? Is it maybe like a disassociation?
I think that's pretty possible, especially if she's writing these letters to her daughter that, you know, have all these conspiracy theories and are assigned mom and dad. If she kind of like in her mind something else happened, or it was kind of like if she was like schizophrenic or something, you know? I'm not sure, but I feel like that's definitely something that could be the case with Diane Downs because she is so like kooky.
Well, and not to freak you out, but she also escaped from prison July 11th, 1987, only for about 10 days. And she was found, I think, within 10 miles of the actual prison. I was unable to find a lot of details on how she escaped from prison, which really bummed me out because I would have been fascinated to see whenever you hear people escape from prison, I'm like, how are you doing this? How is the Shawshank Redemption real?
I feel like for her, it was probably like manipulating guards.
You think so?
I think so. That's what I would put my money on.
Yeah, because I think, and she reminds me of, do you ever see Ex Machina, the droids? She kind of reminds me of a droid in how she can sort of replicate human emotion, but you can still very much tell that it is not natural for her. It's not a natural state for her to be in. So I wouldn't be surprised that part of her escaping and surviving for 10 days, so let's assume she had some access to food and water, was through manipulation of people.
I mean, and even if you saw her, she doesn't look like your typical.
She looks terrifying.
I mean,
her face is fucking scary.
Her face is weird, but
her face is really scary. There is something about her eyes, just dead, sunken-in eyes. She scares me, for sure.
But I could see, like, if I just saw this woman in line at the supermarket, I'd be like, oh, she's having a bad day. But I wouldn't be like, she's a murderer.
You'd be like, she's tired.
Yeah, she's tired.
She does look really tired.
Had to pipe a little too hard.
But the good news is that even though she escaped, she has repeatedly been denied parole, and she's not going to be getting out anytime soon. But her story fascinated the media and the public for a while. Obviously, we're still talking about it in 2017.
Oh, dear.
So I want to ask you, what sort of a precedent do you think she set for the big all-American, all-access, 24-hour news trials that we see today?
I think her case would probably be handled exactly the way it was, like Jodi Arias, where it's kind of like she would probably have even more access to news and stories, because I think even now more than ever, we're interested in kind of like these stories and things that are not necessarily news, but they're just kind of entertaining.
And I also think stories that put our own humanity into question.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I'm a human, but Diane Downs is a human, and she just, in cold blood, tried to murder all 3 of her children, how are we the same? This really puts your own humanity to the test. Is that a gene in all of us? Is that something that exists? Is that a darkness that is in all of us? Or is it just in Diane Downs because she's, a narcissistic, sociopath, histrionic personality?
But it also makes me question kind of like how much of it has to do with like our interest in women who are promiscuous who also murder, because I feel like most of the women that you hear that are serial killers or murderers, there's always a focus on their like sex lives. Like even like, I mean, with Jodi Arias, with
Right. Well, even with us at the top of the episode, I know a big part of my own research was a lot about her sex life and the men that she slept with and how she seduced them and what were her motivations and what does that say about her. And we can go back and forth on whether or not that even should be a factor.
Yeah.
I think that it does tie in with a lot of her personality traits. I think it's important that she used sexuality as a way to manipulate people.
Yeah.
But it's a really good point. Whenever a woman is on trial, we want to know, so who's she fucking? Like
we want to know the details. We want to know like the sordid details of their sex lives. I mean, even with like Jodi Arias, like they had all the, they have a sexual relationship, but I feel like with women who kill, we want to know, like I feel like there's always a link to their sex lives. Not necessarily, maybe the ones that we hear about more so than ever.
Yeah, well, like the case of Carla Homolko, have you heard of her? And she was this Canadian serial killer with her husband, and a big thing was they were having sex and they were murdering, and that becomes the story. Eileen Wuornos, the same thing, like she was the prostitute who killed. And I do think that there is absolutely, at least within, I would say, the 20th, 21st century, but probably even further back, if a woman is killing, then what's wrong with her sexually? There's some sort of a sexual intrigue there. Rarely do you have, I don't know, a woman who does not experience sexual attraction just going on a rampage, or maybe that exists, but it would make the headlines.
Exactly. It's just covered more frequently, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of sort of sex symbols, this is a bad segue, but look, They made a movie about Diane Downs, and it was called Small Sacrifices. It was based on the book by Anne Rule, and they got Farrah Fawcett of Charlie's Angels to star as Diane Downs, which is a very generous casting, if you ask me. But there's a scene that I think is really interesting in the movie that depicts when they play the song Hungry Like the Wolf, which was the song that was playing in the car the night that Diane Downs killed her kids. And in the courtroom, Diane Downs reportedly started, tapping to the music a little bit, and they recreated that scene in the movie. So let's toss to that right now. So that's an iconic Lifetime scene. But as Christine and I were just watching it, we were just saying, what a piece of garbage. Which I don't know. You know when I say things like this on this show, and I'll say that a serial killer is garbage or like a garbage person, or I hate them, they suck. I feel bad sometimes, and isn't that a weird feeling to feel? Like, should I feel bad for Diane Downs at all?
That's what makes you different from Diane Downs. Is that even in calling her a piece of garbage, you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. You have to remember, she doesn't feel that ever. She could like shoot you, and she'd just be like, you want to go get tacos?
Right, it's the same.
That's the thing that we have that makes us different from people like Diane Downs, is our ability to be like, I shouldn't call her that. She's a person. She has feelings. For you to empathize with her. To be like, she could be nice. Maybe she's really nice to the other inmates. And also, Hungry Like a Wolf is a banger. Who can blame her? Like, I love that you have
No, you're so right. I actually think that's a great note to end on, because God, it's such a complicated show to have when you're feeling empathy for people that don't experience the emotion that is empathy.
Yeah.
Christine, thank you so much for coming on Murder with Friends. Where can people see you? Where can they find you?
I'm actually going to be opening for Maria Bamford in San Diego on January 14th. Tickets are on sale now. I'm on Twitter. I have lots of videos online. Please follow me on Twitter, and come to a show. I'm performing regular in LA.
Yes, awesome. Yeah. All right, guys, that was the case of Diane Downs. We want to hear from you in the comment section below. Had you heard about this case? What really sticks out about Diane Downs and her creepy personality to you? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.